All right. Is it the best conference in college football? Well, unfortunately, last season, neither in the regular season nor in the postseason did we have the matchups against the perceived best conference in college football to prove it on the field. But we can always speculate, we can conjecture, and we can compare. And when we do the breakdown of the Power 5 matchups non-conference, I believe that it played the best in 2014. We are talking Pac-12 football, and we're going to do it every Wednesday night at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, and we do it with the best bloggers in the conference. And tonight, to lead us off on our premiere show, we've got Don King from Last Word on Sports, and we've also got Mike W.R. from Gojo Bruin. Hey, guys, I can't imagine doing this thing without you two.
Well,
cool, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Mark. Thanks.
So we were all set to do nothing but strictly Pac-12 North analysis, get us set for Pac-12 South next week, dive right into the season. But a little bit of controversy this week. So we will start with the head man at USC, Steve Sarkisian. Acted like a knucklehead, acted like a child, acted irresponsibly. We've seen issues surrounding college football concerning athletes, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids acting in similar fashion, and the discipline is fairly harsh. So, Don, I'll start with you in regards to the Sarkisian situation and how it's being handled.
Yeah, it's being dramatically underplayed. And given his statement that he made yesterday, I apologize. I mixed a little bit of alcohol with my medications. Would love to know what medications they were, but he didn't elaborate. He's being essentially sent to treatment by his athletic director. All of that looks like it's being strong-armed a little bit to try to manage the PR game and get it to blow over. I think it's ridiculous. He should sit a game, maybe even two. If any college kid in the country did this, and any program in the country, including at Southern Cal, there's no way they'd be able to play week one. He shouldn't be able to coach week one either. I think it's hypocritical.
Okay, we got Mr. Bruin here, so he's got to be chomping at the bit, salivating to break down this situation concerning USC's head coach.
Yeah, there's the rival in me that just wants to go all in on Sarkisian, but there's also the unbiased writer in me who tries to see this from all sides. It's definitely an embarrassment. I do my own podcast, and we were talking about it last night, where Steve Sarkisian is the head coach of USC football, one of the most recognized positions in all of sports, American sports at least. To act like this at a salute to Troy, a kickoff dinner celebration, I get that there's a little bit extra, excitement and oomph to that. Maybe, saying "F fight on," whatever it is. But to be slurring and, just to kind of make an arse of himself, to use the British one, to be a little less harsh, but definitely made an arse of himself. And then the fallout was a little bit more awkward because, like Don said, he came out and had this little speech about mixing meds and alcohol. First off, why would you even say that? Because that raises questions. What meds? Why don't you just say, "I'm sorry, I'm going to be paying for it this way, this way, this way." Dude, end of story. Now he says meds and alcohol. That just raises questions.
Agreed.
Secondly, I believe it was Inside USC, one of the website writers about USC football, came out with a tweet 2 days ago that said alcohol will no longer be served in the locker room.
Yeah, I saw that.
Number one, why would you even say that? Why not keep that in-house? Have a memo. Just guys, we're not doing this. But no, it's brought out to the public. And the second question is, why was that even allowed in the first place? I mean, for anyone that's actually played sports, who's played, from pickup games to high school to college or football. I haven't played any college or professional football games, but at the end of the game, you're tired. One of the last things you want to do is drink alcohol. At least for me, I love a beer or two from now on, but all I want is water and to rest. Maybe revel in the win. Try to figure out what went wrong in a loss, but alcohol is just like the last thing from my mind. And a lot of people that I've talked to was like, why would there be alcohol? It just kind of says something about the culture that we didn't know before, but is slowly coming out. And then, with the flurry of tweets, actually on both the UCLA and USC side of Twitter, everyone just kind of going off on Sark. And you should be, because like I said, you're the head of one of the most recognizable coaching positions in the country. You have to act with a little bit more, how can I say, responsibility than that. I mean, I just, as suffering through the Pete Carroll years, I can't stand Pete Carroll, but at the same time, he held himself to a certain degree, a certain respectability. That's why he won all those championships. That's why he got all the recruits. That's why people still love him, even though he bailed on the school. He did a lot. He did a lot for USC, mostly because he had an attitude that you want from a head coach. And not to draw parallels, but that's kind of what UCLA fans are getting now with Jim Mora. That's what I see with David Shaw at Stanford. Mark Helfrich at Oregon, he's just personally, I love Mark Helfrich. Saying I don't want to say that about Oregon, but there's just something about Helfrich that you just gotta like, and those are the coaches that you're drawn to, and those are the coaches that are going to bring big time football to your schools. So it's tough situation for USC, and like I said, from a UCLA fan perspective, from a rival perspective, I definitely want to rail on him. But last point, if there is a deeper issue with meds or hope not alcoholism, that's when it becomes sad, when it's not funny, when things get really serious, and Sarkisian has to deal with something a little bit deeper than just being, a 40-year-old frat boy.
Yep.
Yeah, you hit on something in particular there, Mike, in regards to Sarkisian's reputation coming to USC. If anything, he didn't have a whole lot of room
also
to
true.
act this way. This isn't the first coach that we look to when we talk about integrity and character and running a program correctly. So he needed to prove at this level. I know he's coached at Washington, of course, a Pac-12 semi-power, but this is a whole new level as you started out your dissertation about USC football and this head coaching position and the place it holds in American sports. And he needed to take that seriously and show that he could not only coach a football team to wins and championships, but conduct himself in a certain way, especially considering what we saw with some recent coaches there and some issues off the field.
Yeah, he basically kicked it.
Sure, Mike. But also just dealing with the actions versus the discipline. So we constantly see college athletes, and in particular football players, transgressions being held to a certain level above the average college student. So the preaching is that you're playing at this elite university, you're in the spotlight, you're held to a higher standard. But they're still 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, and then we're not holding the coach to that same standard. If any kid on any football team in America did the same thing that Steve Sarkisian did, he would be suspended 1 or 2 football games minimum.
My point precisely.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable leaving it right there.
Yeah.
Definitely. And just to make one other analogy there, Mike's going to be able to fill us in a little bit better because I'm losing the player's name. It was a USC or UCLA running back. This was like 2 or 3 years ago, made some derogatory statements about the other team, and it was caught by TMZ, and he didn't know he was on a public forum. So this is being caught by social media, and he was suspended for a game for just making derogatory comments.
Yep.
And you know what?
Makes sense.
There's so many players from across the country that could be.
Sorry to cut you off, Mike. What was that?
I was just going to say, but especially with social media, there are so many players across the country in different programs that could be. But I'm drawing a blank on who it is. But yeah, definitely. Like with UCLA, Adrian Clem, their offensive line coach, he was put on leave with pay for violation, and he UCLA did their own investigation, and they determined that he's going to be suspended for the first 2 games. You know, different scenario, but he did wrong, and he's paying for it by not being, being part of the team for the first 2 games of the season. Although this is not a recruiting violation for Sarkisian, it's a black eye for USC, and it's just one of many that just keeps coming out. Is like it just seems that USC needs to put, and I can't speak for them because I'm not in that culture, but it's just when you're at that level, you have to act a certain way. And if this happened at Notre Dame, if it happened at Alabama, if it happened at Florida, Ohio State, they're going to get ripped on too. If it was at Grambling or Indiana or Wyoming, we would hear about it, kind of go, oh, those guys, and we'd forget about it after a day. This isn't going to go away anytime soon.
Nope.
Yeah, I typically hate when the court of public opinion comes in and sways that organization and forces them to enact discipline that may not necessarily fit the crime, but the court of public opinion may be a good thing in this case if it forces USC's hand to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
All right.
I just hope College Game Day goes to the Coliseum in week 3, and we get to see the Stanford students who make the road trip down I-5 and the signs in the crowd. I bet there will be some good ones. I'll bet on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, if we can count on a crowd that's going to be a bit witty and be able to go beyond your typical taunting of the opponent's coach, that it would come from the Cardinal student section there.
Nerd Nation, baby.
That's right. Mike, we're going to stay in your wheelhouse because there was also an incident involving Jim Mora. Berating could be the comment made, or just coaching, as is the action in football, coaching each and every day across America. His young quarterback, Josh Rosen, who's a freshman, has yet to be named the starter officially, but is expected to be just that. Mike, just your reaction to Mora's actions on the field and then his comments afterwards.
Well, first off, breaking news. Today he was named starter. Josh Rosen was named starter about 2-3 hours ago. So he's in for the Virginia game. I'll get back to that. But going back to Mora publicly berating Josh Rosen, I would just like to say every player on that team has been berated by Mora. He's a football coach. That's what he does. I've been to several practices, and not just Mora, but every coach on the team. F this, S that, what the blah, blah, blah are you doing? That's football. I mean, I never played football or organized football. I was too small. But I played basketball in high school and volleyball. Same deal. Coaches do that all the time. I got ripped by coaches for not doing what they're supposed to do. That's the coach's job. He has to maintain. He's basically the captain of a ship, and if the ship the crew members don't do what's needed, the ship's going to go down. And especially with how Mora has changed the culture at UCLA, he's been doing this for 3 years. The only reason that's a big deal now is because Mora basically went to the media, directed his comments at the media, and said, "Tell your readers that's why he hasn't been named the starter yet." So it was like kind of this breaking the fourth wall type of deal, but it happens all the time. The only, he's just basically, he didn't want to just hand over the keys to Rosen and make sure that, this is yours to handle now. You're going to command this offense. No, he has to be broken in like every other football player, from the punter to the kicker to the offensive lineman, defensive line, everyone. Everyone gets the same treatment, and it's football.
Yeah, I have 3 quick things on it. Number one, I have no problem with Mora berating him, coaching him hard, whatever you want to call it. That's his job. That's what he's paid for. That's how these kids develop. I didn't struggle with that at all. It's 180 degrees in the opposite direction to me of the topic we were just talking about with Sarkisian. It's just the job, and that's part of it, and that's how it goes. Number two, he probably wishes he had started Rosen's de-recruitment process maybe a little bit sooner, to kind of deflate the bubble that was his head when he was so touted as the #1 pocket passer in the nation coming in. You know, it's one of those things that's kind of heady for any 17, 18-year-old kid. Probably had a slightly inflated ego, and I am confident that Mora relished the opportunity to bring the kid down a little bit and humble him a little to keep him hungry for the season. Number 3, as soon as I heard about this incident and how big a deal Mora made it with the press kind of waving them in and encouraging them to report it out, I was absolutely positive that Rosen was going to be the starter in Week 1 for UCLA, and sure enough, that's what happened. So, here we go, onward and upward. It sounds like the kid is legit. Can't wait to see what he can do. I wish him well every week except when UCLA visits the farm. But I'm looking forward to see what the young gun can do.
Mm-hmm. And playing off your second point, Don, there are bad football coaches and bad coaches in general that react emotionally. They're invested in the team. Yep. Their heart might be in the right place, but they just react. And most of those guys are coaching at lower levels. The coaches at Jim Mora's level, when they react emotionally, sure, there's some sincerity there, but he's also pushing buttons, and he knows which buttons to push. He knows which players will respond to the pat on the back versus the kick in the rear, and when that needs to happen.
That's exactly right.
He explained that afterwards, that, hey, we got to get this right, and therefore I'm going to coach emotionally, and I'm going to hold them to a high standard and push them to the limit in practice. We get to the games, and it's all about building up, encouraging, let's go get them, and exactly. No issues there. Mike laid it out very well in regards to the way coaches coach and athletes are accustomed to it.
Absolutely. I have no issue there.
All right. So let's head north to the Pac-12 North, where it's been Stanford, Oregon for quite some time here, battling it out for this division championship. They have battled on even ground for much of the last 5 years or so, but last season Oregon was clearly the better team, winning by roughly 25 or 30 points against the Cardinal. Although, boy, when I saw Stanford play some other schools, Notre Dame, USC, fill in the blank, and finish it off with a trampling of UCLA and of Maryland in the bowl game, the Stanford team on occasion could play with just about anyone. So, Don, it's your division. We'll start with you to kind of give us an overview of the Cardinal and the rest of the North Division.
Yeah, we talked Stanford last week, Mark. I feel good about this team. I think it's solid. I think it has a chance to have a really strong season. Obviously my fingers are crossed as a fan. I think this is going to be a very good year, but not a great one. I think Stanford will be the runner-up in the Pac-12 North to Oregon. I think 9-3 is a real solid projection for this Stanford team. The over/under at 9 feels about right to me. But I think Oregon wins the Pac-12 North, and in fact, I think Oregon wins the conference again this year. Vis-a-vis the Oregon quarterback battle, I think you're going to see Vernon Adams Jr. win that job. That's my guess. It was awfully quiet coming out of Eugene as he was struggling to put away that last math class so he could walk at Eastern Washington. And when he did it, the sigh of relief amongst the crowd, the fans at least, was palpable. And honestly, I get the impression that the football coaching staff was pretty relieved as well. So I think he's going to get the nod. I think they're loaded at the skill positions as they usually are, so they're going to be formidable. Do I think Stanford could challenge them for the Pac-12 North title? Yeah, I do. It could happen, but things are going to have to break just right. And that battle at USC in Week 3 looms large. I think Notre Dame is going to be really good, and I think Oregon is still going to be the class in the North again this season.
I've caught some conference preview shows, not just the Pac-12, but some other conferences in recent days, and thank goodness we're a little bit smarter than some of these preview shows that come out where it's basically they've got some talent. If they develop it, coach them up, limit the turnovers, and put things together, expect them to have a good season. Some shoddy analysis out there, so this is why I push it to you, Don, for one more response before I kick it to Mike. So Stanford is the one standing in Oregon's way that's legit.
Yeah.
Jared Goff is extremely good, but he's one guy. So I think outside of a miracle, it's Stanford that could be a one-game season for Oregon getting in their way. So you talked about there being a chance. What is the near perfect formula without getting to ridiculous proportions for Stanford to be a challenger, a serious challenger to the Ducks?
Yeah, it's going to be that young defensive line coming together really quickly. Apparently, all the signs have been good throughout fall camp. The younger secondary coming together equally well, and and that's not just against Oregon. It's also handling Cal spreading them out, and like you mentioned, Goff firing it all over the field. And all of the accounts coming out of Berkeley in the preseason are that defense is a lot more stout than it's been in recent years, and the offense is going to be able to score on just about anybody. So if you're looking for a Pac-12 North dark horse, Cal is it. I've got them finishing third in the conference. I think they're absolutely going to a bowl game this year, and I think the big game could be dynamic and intriguing for the first time in quite some time now. And I want to say that it's been 6 in a row now, something like that. David Shaw has not yet lost a big game to Cal since taking over as the head man at Stanford, which has got to be thrilling to him as a former Stanford player under Bill Walsh. So for Stanford to get it done against Oregon, it's going to have to be another one of those clock control games, much like the one 2 years ago in Palo Alto. I think the formula is going to be different. There's no Tyler Gaffney, no 225-pound anvil to keep slamming into the line. I do think the offensive line is going to be very talented this year, and with 4 starters coming back, I think it's going to be a stronger unit than it was particularly early in the season last year. But there's going to be a whole lot more Christian McCaffrey, Barry J. Sanders on the screens, some Ramon Wright in the short yardage. It's going to be a different kind of ball control, a lot of the controlled passing game. Tight ends come into play for the big third down conversions. But basically it's still going to be playing keep away from Oregon to break through and make it happen. I don't think the formula, I think how the formula is executed will be different. I think the formula is going to be exactly the same.
Yeah, Sonny Dykes took over a couple years ago. In that first season, it was about as ugly as it can get. Winless in the conference, only won one game, lost to I believe an FCS school, and barely beat an FCS school.
Correct.
In going 1-11. And based on, I had Coach Dykes on a couple times, and also talked to some other people close to the Cal program, is that the locker room, it was kind of a make or break situation. He was either going to lose it, or by getting a bit tough with people, although that's not his reputation, inside the locker room, getting a bit tough and kicking some people out and forcing some transfers, that they put some things together, and they were a much different football team. They were like 1 score away from getting to postseason play. Yep. They took UCLA to a 4-point game. They took USC down the wire as well, and had a shot where they had the ball in their hands to possibly pull off the upset. So Cal's going to be extremely interesting, and they've got an early season date against Texas to look out for. Mike, as you look straight north to Oregon and Stanford, I know you've got a position where Oregon's been really rough on your football team in recent years, where UCLA's taken those steps, and we've seen the progression of the program near the elite status. But as soon as you get close, somebody like Oregon, and it's typically the Ducks, kind of puts you in your place and makes the Bruins realize that maybe they haven't quite arrived.
Yeah, it's I don't think UCLA has beaten Stanford or Oregon since Glenn Miller was around. So it's been a long time. It hasn't been that long, but just Stanford and Oregon have UCLA's number. Mora has not been able to figure out the power game of Stanford, and they haven't been able to figure out the up-tempo offense and the power defense of Oregon. Obviously, I think those two teams are going to be the 2 top teams. I keep struggling with who would win the conference. I had Oregon for most of the summer, but just with recent information coming out of both camps, I like Stanford. I actually think that they're going to win the division, mostly because Oregon, they lose, I think it's 3 offensive linemen. They lose a Heisman Trophy winner. They lose 4 or 5 starting defensemen, especially cornerback Ifo Ikre Olomu, who that guy was just awesome, fantastic defensive player. And with that, I think it was an ESPN article I read. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, where it said that a lot of the Oregon players are actually feel a little bit more comfortable with Jeff Locke. So where does that put Vernon Adams? So that's a weird situation about Oregon's quarterback situation. So like little things like that don't have me sold on Oregon, and I just hate/love David Shaw, and he had a bad not a bad year. I mean, it started off bad, but it ended pretty well, and he can recruit. He knows the power game. Stanford's hasn't been down since Harbaugh took over and then transferred that power over to David Shaw. And like Don said, they have an incredible offensive line. So I personally think this is going to be Stanford's year again. The key for me for Stanford is the fact that Kevin Hogan didn't have that great of a season until the last 4 or 5 games. I guess he had some personal issues going on. His father passed away mid-season, and obviously that'll just wreck your mindset. But then you look at those last few games, and he just turned it on. UCLA, all they had to do was beat Stanford and win the Pac-12 South. They got rolled. I think it was 31-10, if my memory serves. And
it was something like that.
God bless the Pac-12 network and Football in 60. I recently saw that game again, and just looking closely at both Stanford's offense against UCLA's defense and UCLA's offense against Stanford defense, and the Bruins just couldn't figure it out. This year I have UCLA losing to Stanford again. It's up at the Farm on a Thursday night. Thanks, ESPN. But I like where Stanford is going right now. Oregon, obviously they're not going to be down either. They're going to keep recruiting. I mean, they just came off the national championship game. They lost, but because of that, they got some really big recruits. You go to a national championship game, and you're going to get attention. You're not going to go away anytime soon, unless Helfrich takes meds and drinks at a preseason dinner. Anyway, moving on to that.
That's crazy to think that would ever happen to a big-time football coach. Come on, Mike. What are you talking about?
Shots fired.
But definitely, I don't think this is Oregon's year. They're not down. I think Stanford's going to come back. But it's the interesting part is with the Pac-12 North, the last 4 teams, you can pick any one of those teams to finish 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's kind of the same with Pac-12 South. The top 5 teams, nobody has a clue who's going to win. It could be aside from Colorado, it can be any one of the 5 teams. So
that's right.
Whoever comes in 3rd to 6th in the North, it's a crapshoot. But personally, I think Washington and Cal are going to be the next 2 teams up and coming. I don't, a lot of people have a lot of faith in Chris Peterson, and I did too before last year. It just seemed that he didn't do enough with the players that he had. I think he was like 6 players drafted, first 2 rounds, something like that.
Yeah, and some key defenders too. I mean, they looked stout on paper and some studs.
Yeah, and definitely. But this year they have no quarterback. Siler Miles retired, and they're just kind of that team is a bit slapdash. And I think I'm going to give Peterson some time. He definitely is starting to change the culture. How many guys did he kick off the team?
Yeah, several.
And those were. Hate to rub it in again, but those were Sarkisian's players, and there might have been a certain culture up there, but Peterson wants to change that, and that's going to be a little bit tough, but I think he needs at least 2 more years to really get his type of football going up at Washington, but this year I don't think it'll happen, which is why I think Cal will be the default 3rd place team. Their defense wasn't that great last year, but yeah, it's going to do a lot better. They have some awesome receivers, and then with Jared Goff slinging the ball around, they're going to open some eyes, and I think they're going to win some of those close games that they lost last year.
Yep.
But at the same time, they're still battling with Oregon and Stanford, and everyone sans Colorado in the South Division.
Yeah, that's right.
And last tidbit, I think Washington State will be okay. I think Leach will do some extra things, but the interesting one that I want to see, although I have him last, Oregon State, Gary Anderson. I love what he did at Wisconsin. I think it's going to be a really rough transition year, but I think they might be a dark horse.
They might. Yeah, Storm Woods is back. Watch out for that guy. He's a player.
That's right. Storm Woods has kind of left us because of injuries, and I was reminded during the offseason that he is still in college football and was very productive early in his career.
Yeah,
so, guys, what I'm going to tell you about the Big 12 that I like about the Pac-12 and hate about everybody else is scheduling. So, in the Big 10, the SEC, and the ACC, you got 14 teams trying to squeeze in 8 games. Therefore, you play everyone in your division. You only play 2 of the other 7 teams in the other division, and it creates huge discrepancies in scheduling and fairness of schedule. So, for example, in the ACC, you could be playing Clemson and Florida State in the other division, and it happens on a few occasions, and your competitors in the same division are playing Wake Forest and Syracuse. That is basically a 2-game swing minimum.
Yep.
Okay. In the Big 12, everybody plays everybody, no championship game, so that's another matter. At least in the Pac-12, 9 conference games, I love it. There's only 12 teams, so there's 9 of 11, so you only miss 2. And because of the balance of the conference, those 2 games are typically null and void. So, for example, Stanford misses Utah and Arizona State, 2 very good teams. Oregon misses UCLA and Arizona.
2 very good teams.
That's about as much of a wash as you can get.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not an issue where we have to figure, okay, well, Oregon misses USC and UCLA, and Stanford misses Utah and Colorado, so wow, that's a huge advantage. Not so here. So I love the scheduling. And while we're on the point of scheduling, of course, the conference championship determined by conference games, but the college football playoff is very much going to rest on situations like Michigan State hosting Oregon and the like. So are there any non-conference games out there that you guys really are looking at that look juicy to you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's that 13th team in the Pac-12, Notre Dame, and they're going to have something to say about the CFP aspirations of a couple of the teams that could potentially win the conference and be competing for a slot. And Notre Dame would love to hang a second or third loss on a Stanford or on a USC and keep them from qualifying for the playoff. And it could happen. That is entirely conceivable to me in both cases. So there are some great out-of-conference games coming up, and we've already talked about the Texas tilt. There's some really good ones that were scheduled this season. Proud of the conference for kind of stepping up and trying to make some noise out of the conference as well as within.
Yeah, definitely.
Decades we'll get an SEC team to come out west and take on. Actually, I kid about that. I'm dead serious about it, but in future schedules, in looking ahead, this college football playoff has rattled some cages and shaken some programs up, and the SEC is going to be heading to the West Coast here in the next few years for some interesting matchups. But as we look at 2015, I think that Cal at Texas game is an interesting one that could really solidify the Pac-12 as a strong, strong conference. If a Cal, who's a 500 team, goes out to Texas and wins against one of the, I know Texas is down, but still one of the 4 or 5 best programs or teams in the Big 12, that could be big. Washington, Boise State's a bit off the radar. That's a nice little game there. Oregon State goes out to Michigan, and the Beavers, I'm guessing, will be competitive because Michigan's coming back, and we expect them to be better, but certainly can't take anyone for granted. Yeah. And those are some of the better matchups, and Don and I reviewed it last week. Stanford is just they have lined up a brutal slate of games, and out of conference that includes Northwestern, Central Florida, and Notre Dame. So, guys, a couple more things before we go. I would love to hear your thoughts on any particular players in this division that may be somewhat off the radar, but have some star power and that you're really excited to see. Anybody there in the North Division, Don?
Yeah, they're the names that have come up before. Storm Woods. I'm really curious to see how he bounces back after that injury-riddled season. As I understand, he's been kind of doubling down with the strength and conditioning coach that Coach Anderson brought with him. It feels like he's in good shape and is going to be able to stay healthy this year and have a really good season. You talked about McCaffrey. I can't wait to see what he can do with the entire playbook available to him. He's bulked up a little bit. He's never going to be mistaken for Toby Gerhart, but he's got a little more bulk on him, and from what I understand, hasn't lost any of the speed, which is impressive for those of us who've seen him fly down the sidelines a time or two last season, and that gaudy 10 yards per touch average he had. He's going to be doing a lot on special teams as well. So very excited to see what he could do. One name that hasn't come up, another guy I'm looking at is Cal's running back, Lasco. That kid he's a baller too. A bit of a bruiser, hard to get down on the ground. Is going to be a great complement with all of those fantastic wideouts that Cal's got that Mike mentioned earlier, and with Jared Goff with the ability to get the ball to any point on the field, I think there are going to be a lot of running lanes open as well. So keep an eye out for Daniel Lasco.
Okay, Mike, our parting topic here.
Mm-hmm.
The Pac-12 last year, I did a breakdown in looking at the results between the Power 5 conferences, and I took seeding into play in the formula, and the Pac-12 went 13-6 against the other Power 5 conference teams, and the seeding played it out to where the formula actually strengthened based on the Power 5 matchups and the strength of the Pac-12 scheduling out of conference. Unfortunately, we had no SEC Pac-12 matchups either in the regular season or in the postseason to go with, but based on sheer results, the Pac-12 played better football against the other Power 5 conferences than anyone. So my question for you is, the Pac-12 the best conference in college football?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, someone brought this up to me last week, I believe it was. That's been the big thing the last 2 years, and I think the gap got, depending on who you talk to in the country, the gap either got smaller or it flipped to where the Pac-12 was the strongest conference in the nation. And and this is just one example, but it's a pretty big example, is that the Pac-12 got a lot farther than the SEC did in last year's college football playoff. Alabama lost in the semifinals. Oregon wrecked Florida State, and then Oregon played Ohio State, which, funny enough, came from a conference that is not one of the stronger conferences in the nation. Yet, Ohio State was just packed with talent. But for conferences, it's going to be brutal. I mean, the thing is I've heard a lot of LA radio personalities and a lot of LA writers say that the Pac-12 is going to beat each other up this year. And if they beat each other up so bad that the best team has 2 or even 3 losses, the College Football Committee will probably look down upon that and probably look past them. But at the same time, it's like you got to look at the conference as a whole. I mean, there are 7 teams in the Pac-12 that have a chance to win their division or the conference, and you can maybe say that about the SEC. And you still have your powerhouses, Auburn and Alabama, but right now it's just maybe I'm a homer for Pac-12, but just looking at it, the top 7 teams, Oregon, Stanford, UCLA, USC, Arizona State, and Utah, that is just brutal.
And Mike, that's why the non-conference games are so important. So Oregon, Michigan State, you get an SEC opponent. Arizona State goes out to Texas A&M. Very important game, interesting game there. I won't go through the whole list, but there are enough good matchups that the Pac-12, if they get into a situation where, let's say, Oregon loses 2 games, wins the Pac-12 championship, they're sitting at 11-2, they beat Michigan State, and Michigan State is only sitting there with 1 or 2 losses and played very well in the Big Ten, or fill in the blank with another scenario, USC beating who they needed to beat out of conference, and then those teams succeeding in their conferences. It's going to take that kind of scenario if there's a Pac-12 champion with 2 losses to possibly turn the tide against 1-loss champions from other conferences. So, Donna, I'll serve you the same question, the SEC versus the Pac-12.
I think it's gotten really, really close. I still give the SEC the edge by a hair. And really what it comes down to me is the SEC West is still just loaded. And the Pac-12 South is loaded. So look at those head-to-head, 1 through 6, 1 through 7. I think they're really, really close. The difference then is in the other division, and we talked about this a little. The Pac-12 North is really a 2-horse race until Cal or somebody else can prove differently. I think the SEC East is a little bit stronger, and really, to me, that's the basis for the separation. This year I could definitely see Georgia or Tennessee or Missouri kind of winning that division and making some noise later and into the postseason, and that's really what tips it to me. But it's gotten to where it is that close. I think the Pac-12 is right there. It's going to have a chance to prove out on the field this season. Definitely a more stringent in-conference schedule with the 9 games versus 8, and there's some great out-of-conference Pac-12 games where it'll get to demonstrate an ability to play very well against different kinds of styles in different parts of the country. So, we'll see. I think it's going to be, this could be the year that the Pac-12 proves out definitively to be better. I think the SEC just still has an edge, but I think it is tiny and shrinking.
SEC quarterback play has not recovered from the departure of Johnny Manziel, A.J. McCarron, Nope. Zach Mettenberger, that entire class. Aaron Murray left, and the quarterback play was down last year. I expect it to be down this year. The quarterback play in the Pac-12 is elite.
It is
probably
good.
Top to bottom the best in the country, and the Big Ten is even better than the SEC at the quarterback position right now. So that has evened things out to a certain extent. I would agree that the SEC still has a bit of an edge. Florida's obviously a sleeping giant. Everybody else is close to the top of their game in both conferences. Texas A&M has recruited like a top 5 team. Now they need to go out and play like that. Arkansas showed us something down the stretch that they could possibly be much better than they've been in the last couple of years. So it should be very interesting, and I am hoping that we have these 2 conferences play in the postseason this year, regardless of who's playing in the playoff or the national championship game. I would love to see some fill in the blank, Auburn, UCLA matchup, whatever, between those 2 conferences would be amazing. Amazing football.
I completely agree. That would be great.
This is going to be fun, you guys. So this is our first edition of the Pac-12 breakdown, and once we dive into the season, we're going to have all sorts of good football to talk about. So these are 2 of my main guys right here, Don King from Last Word on Sports and Mike W.R. from Gojo Bruin. And, guys, it's been fun.
Indeed it has. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Good talk.